Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Ms. Shelli Brunswick. Ms. Brunswick is the COO of Space Foundation, which is a space acquisition and program management leader and congressional liaison for the U.S. Air Force. She also oversaw the Center for Innovation and Education, Symposium 365, and Global Alliance. Additionally, she advocates for space technology innovation, entrepreneurship, diversity, and inclusion, and does so by collaborating with organizations around the world to connect commercial, government, and educational sectors. Ms. Brunswick actively participates with Women in Aerospace Foundation, Women's Global Gathering, United Nations Space4Women, WomenTech Network, World Business Angels Investment Forum, New York University, Manufacturers Edge, and Colorado Springs Chamber, and EDC to make space accessible to all. And as you can see by the list, she's involved in so many different programs and is continuously spreading space education to many students around the world. I'm so excited to understand her journey on a deeper level. So welcome. Thank you so much for taking some time to conduct this Space Champion interview.
Well, it's my pleasure for joining you. And first of all, please just call me Shelli. And I'm so excited to be joining you as well. What an exciting platform. I watched several of your interviews already. I know many of them as my great friends and colleagues that are UN Space4Women. So I love the work you're doing and how you're helping to advocate and get the message out that there are lots of opportunities for individuals to be part of the space ecosystem. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. That means so much coming from an amazing person like yourself. And so before we get into understanding your journey and what really motivated you to get into the industry, could you first tell us more about your typical day? What do you currently do and how does it run?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Space Foundation. And what that means I do is I take the board of directors and the chief executive officers' goals, visions, and where they want to go. And I work with the Space Foundation team, and we come up with short, medium, and long-term goals to help accomplish the CEO and the board of directors' vision for the organization. So that's what we do. And then I meet with those individuals on my team weekly or even daily, depending on how critical the tasking is, so that we're making sure that we're staying on track, so that ultimately, wherever that goal might lie, short, medium, or long term, I can then report to the board of directors and our CEO that we are accomplishing their goals and tasks. Then the other side of my job is similar to what I'm doing today, joining you, being an advocate for the space ecosystem, joining interviews, talking about the great opportunities that are available to all to come into the space ecosystem, whether that's astronaut to educator, or it's entrepreneur to rocket scientist. There's a place for everyone in the new global space ecosystem. So a lot of my job also is talking with great individuals like yourself and sharing the message so that we can get more diversity and inclusion into the space economy.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. I think it's so important to show everyone that space is truly for all. I feel like there's a lot of stigma, stereotypes that surround the industry. So I'm very glad that you're conducting so many panels. That's how I learned about your work, by sitting on one of your panels. And so I'm curious, could you share more about your work with how you want to or plan to empower women in the space industry?
So there's a number of ways. The first way that I'm very passionate is about giving back. So I am a mentor for many different organizations. So the Space Foundation does have our young professional program called New Gen, and we hope that you all join us that are watching, that want to be part of the space ecosystem, 35 and under. And so that's one way the Space Foundation gives back. We have a women's global gathering that we conduct at our annual Space Symposium. And then there are some outside organizations that we also partner with and that I am a mentor for. And you mentioned them. The UN Office of Outer Space Affairs has a mentoring program, and I would call it Space4Women, but it's actually open to men to be mentors as well as proteges. WomenTech Network has a wonderful mentoring program, and although it says women, it is open to men and women around the world. And another great program that I always like to highlight is the Space Generation Advisory Council, which is a great organization for collaboration and connecting. So those are some of the ways that both the Space Foundation as well as I personally want to give back and help create that next generation of space workers and entrepreneurs and innovators and explorers.
That's fantastic. And, you know, when I was reading about your background, I learned that you were actually a part of the military, like I was mentioning earlier. And that really intrigues me because I've met so many professionals in the space industry who were once part of the military. So I'm curious what motivated you to go from the US Air Force into, you know, becoming the COO of Space Foundation.
Well, in the Air Force, we had several core tenets that we lived by, such as integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. And I'm sure all of us look at those type of core values. And when I was retiring from the Air Force, I wanted to go to work for another organization that wanted to give back, that wanted to contribute to the greater good. And the Space Foundation definitely exemplifies excellence in all we do, the commitment to service before self, trying to help create more opportunity in the space ecosystem. So it was an easy transition to go from the US Air Force, which is part of the US government, to working for a nonprofit such as Space Foundation.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful that you chose to take that time even after your retirement to give back, which I think a lot of people don't necessarily do. So I'm very glad that you're doing that. And you know, did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today, or did you have some twists and turns in your journey that kind of defined, you know, how you are today?
Well, I think we have to think that how old I might be. And so back when I was in high school or junior high, women and diversity and we were not part of the space ecosystem per se. There were some women, but you really had to be part of the government, whether that was the military or NASA. And it was really the US and the Russians and just a few small players. And so we really started our space program for humanity was really just a small amount of players, a couple countries, primarily male. Where we are today has totally transcended that. And now it is commercialized. It is open to not only men and women, but young and old, different interdisciplinary, whether you're a medical doctor to an entrepreneur, and also globally. So for me, this was not even uh, a dream because I didn't even know it existed or that it would exist. And what I share with you is that many of the jobs that are going to exist in the future, we don't even know what they are now. So we are creating that future workforce. Those kids that are eighth graders today, they're going to take jobs that don't even exist. So how do we think about preparing them to be innovative and entrepreneurial and resilient so that they'll be able to walk into those future jobs? So I just wanted to kind of share my background. This type of job did not exist. And now jobs that are being created in the future, we're creating that workforce for those future jobs. So it's a really exciting time, but it can also be challenging. And how do we help prepare the workforce for that?
Yeah, thank you so much for putting that into perspective. I think as a, you know, high school student myself, sometimes I look beyond what it was like 10, 20 years ago. And it's crazy to think that we've come so far. I'm sure like 20 years ago, we couldn't have imagined all of the private space companies that are really rising up now. And, you know, it's crazy to think how much we've really advanced and made the space industry more accessible in terms of job opportunities, but the diversity in terms of the workforce itself. So it's amazing to hear. And you know, you were part of the Air Force, so I'm sure you kind of had a keen interest in something with related to, you know, space or maybe airplanes or working or to give back. So did you have any interest for space growing up as a child, or did that something, you know, come up as you found out about Space Foundation?
Well, I'll share a little bit about my journey, and I always like to say I have three chapters in my journey. So that first chapter was I enlisted in the Air Force right out of high school. So I did not go to college right away. I went right into the military, and I wanted to see the world, so I got to be stationed. And back then, traveling and seeing the world was exciting. Today, it's a little more commonplace. But I was stationed in Turkey and Germany, and I love being immersed in different cultures. And I actually was a personnel specialist. So I did HR. When I applied to become an officer, so I went to school at night. I used the tuition assistance offered by the Air Force, and many other organizations offer tuition assistance. So I share that with your listeners that take advantage of all those opportunities to continue your education. And I was able to go ahead and apply to become an officer. And I had some mentors and champions that supported me during this journey. And I will also highlight that when I applied to become an officer in the Air Force, I only had a 12% chance of being selected because I was not a STEM professional, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. I am actually a business background with an MBA. So my selection rate was very narrow. but I applied anyways, and I share that with your audience. These are part of the challenges you'll always come up with as you go through your career. The odds may be against you, but do it anyways. The other thing I'll share with you is I was not selected the first time. But what I did was my nomination package automatically met a second selection board, and I went and updated all my letters of recommendation. I redid my entire application because I wanted to do the absolute best I could, even though I thought I was not going to get selected. And on the second time, I did get selected. So again, a little story is always do your best, even when you think the odds are against you, or there's no way you're going to get the job or the promotion or the internship or the research project you want. Try anyways and do your best. And that's when I transitioned into the aerospace industry. So yes, I was part of the Air Force for many years. I was doing personnel, not exactly aerospace or space. When I transitioned to being an officer, that's when I became a space project manager. And then that's when I learned more about the space industry. And then I've been part of the space industry for more than 20 years now. So that kind of tells you. And then when I worked in the space industry, I worked in a myriad of jobs as a project manager. I worked as an in-plant rep at Northrop Grumman. I was a professor of Defense Acquisition University. So I taught space acquisition, or project management, I'll call it. And then my final job was working on Capitol Hill as a budget and appropriations liaison. So the great thing about the Air Force was it gave you a lot of opportunity to learn new jobs, meet new people. And then again, when it was time to retire, I found the opportunity at Space Foundation. And with all the jobs I'd had and the great diversity of experience, it worked out I was a perfect fit for that role. So I share with your audience that you don't really know where the twists and turns of your career are going to take you. Be open to them. Do your best. Sometimes you may not get it the first time. Maybe you get it the second time, or maybe you get something even better.
Wow, that's so important for everyone to remember and realize. I mean, sometimes even as a student ourselves, we apply for something, we don't get it, and we apply again, and we might not get it, but there's something probably even better ahead of us. We just have to keep, pushing in the right direction. So thank you for sharing that. And something that I really want to highlight that you were saying is that you're a business major. You were not traditional in the STEM background going into the aerospace industry, which I think is very, very important to highlight. I feel like whenever I talk with people and I talk about space, there was like physics, Albert Einstein, super smart. And I'm like, that's such a, I mean, yeah, it's true. There are very smart people in the space industry, but also that's not the whole consistency of the group. Everyone is needed, whether it be from the math, the science background, but also the journalism, the marketing, the advertisement, because I'm sure, not every scientist is as good as marketing or journalism as some of the professionals are. So I think it's important to have everyone. And so if you're interested, there's so many careers out there. So thank you for highlighting that.
You're welcome. And again, like you said, 40 years ago, it was primarily military, it was primarily STEM professions. But now, as space has become democratized, commercialized, the opportunities are open to all. And again, that's business majors, project managers, artists, journalists, entrepreneurs, STEM professionals, as well as don't forget our supply chain. We need individuals to go into the manufacturing sector and be part of our supply chain that ultimately 3D print those rockets and other parts and pieces. So there's a whole lot of opportunity, and you can be anywhere from a high school graduate to a PhD and be part of the space ecosystem.
Yeah, that's amazing to just think about how many opportunities exist out there. It's truly limitless. And as we go through your, twists and turns, your 3 chapters, could you share, a few obstacles you might have had that kind of hindered you pursuing your passion, if you have any? And if so, how are you able to overcome those obstacles? Because oftentimes we hear all these success stories, but we don't realize the amount of work it might have taken for someone to overcome those obstacles. So could you share maybe if 1 or 2 of them?
Well, I think I shared a couple of those, and those were, during my 3 chapters. Obviously, the first time I applied to become an officer, the odds were against me, but I applied anyways, and I was turned down anyways, and then I applied again. So you have to remember, don't give up. Sometimes you don't get it the first time, sometimes you might not get it the second time. Or what happens is somebody notices your tenacity and your skill set, and you get hired for something else. So try for it anyways. Even if it seems unattainable, what do you have to lose? Try anyways. The other thing I share is always do your best. I had the opportunity, I put together my application and my nomination to be an officer, And then when I didn't get selected, I went ahead and went back to all the individuals who helped write letters of recommendation, and I asked them to update their letters, and I updated my application, and I rewrote my essay. I didn't have to do it. I could have just let the old application meet the selection board, but I took the time to update it to make sure I did my best. So even if you think the odds are against you and you try anyways, also do your best, because then you'll always look back. Had I not been selected to be an officer, then in my mind, I would have known I did my best. There's no second questioning about that. And then as I continued in my career, it was always doing what I shared with you. Just like when I joined the Air Force right out of high school, not a STEM professional, did not go to college right away, went to school at night. You don't have to be a STEM professional, and you don't have to go to college to be in the space industry. There are many certificates that you can get, such as data analytics, cybersecurity, manufacturing. So you can go to a trade school or a community college and get those certificates while you're still in high school, graduate high school, and walk into a great paying job in the space ecosystem. So I just want to share that although my journey had some twists and turns, don't give up. You don't have to follow somebody else's path. Try to find a role model that looks like your path, whether that's in manufacturing or cybersecurity or healthcare. And also look for a role model that might be in your geographic region. You know, the US is different than Canada or Africa or the Middle East. And there are role models everywhere. And as we shared earlier, one of the places you can look for a great role model is the Space for Women program out of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs.
Yeah, that's extremely important to remember. I think, sometimes we get caught up in like what we just see on the outside of all these scientists, and we don't realize the opportunities that exist beyond that. And there's definitely not a traditional way you have to do. I'm a strong believer that school teaches us information, but a lot of it, this real skills that you learn that you can apply to a real job, is not learned in school, but through the internships, the programs, the mentorship opportunities you had. Personally, I'm a very hands-on person, so I think that's probably why I learn better when I'm doing things. But I definitely agree that there's not one way where right after high school you have to go to college in order to get a job. There are many, many paths.
Absolutely. And you kind of highlighted it. There are many paths and there's many ways of education, whether it's formal education, informal education. Nowadays, you can watch wonderful webinars like this that are plentiful, not just in the US, but around the world. There are webinars, hybrid conferences. You can read articles. So there's lots of ways to learn, stay current on technology and in the area you want to focus. Now we have LinkedIn. I have more people reach out. I believe you reached out on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great tool to reach out to individuals that might be able to be a role model for you. And sometimes, and people do reach out to me, and I do answer those emails, and I do try to schedule 10 or 20 minutes with individuals who are looking for a quick mentor session. But again, there are so many great programs out there with WomenTech and UN Office of Outer Space Affairs and global policy and diplomacy and sustainability fellowship programs, International Space University. So there are a lot of great programs out there for your listeners that want to be part of the space economy.
100%. Thank you for bringing up the LinkedIn, though. I have to say, LinkedIn has truly been one of the best social media platforms I've ever been on, because it's not technically social media. It is social media, but I don't view it as one. I feel like when we think of social media, we always think of like Instagram or something that's really, not very beneficial to your life. But I think LinkedIn is something that can be a powerful tool in your career development. I found that I was able to connect with amazing professionals that I never could have imagined talking to, like yourself. And it's crazy to think that LinkedIn is able to do all of that. So, it's awesome. And definitely reaching out through mentors, because there's so many people who are willing to help. So, I'm very glad you're stressing that point. And I'm very curious to, kind of get a little bit away from your journey, but learn more about your interests. So what excites you and what makes you nervous about the future of the space industry from your lens?
Well, I'm super excited about the future of space. And when I talk about the space ecosystem, I'm talking both about space exploration, going out there, as well as the space inspired technology and opportunities that will come back to Earth, whether that's, the healthcare breakthroughs we'll have, advanced manufacturing. When you think about what has happened in space, think about formulated food, our cell phones. Our cell phones have like 3 different technologies. Medical breakthroughs like cataract surgery, mammogram technology. So as you're thinking about space, I'm so excited both about space exploration, but all the breakthrough technologies and the entrepreneurial and innovation we're going to unlock here on Earth. Right now at NASA and the European Space Agency, there are thousands of patents that are waiting to be brought to market. And those technologies are going to better our life here on Earth. So again, think about agriculture. We use precision agriculture to increase our crop yields, which will help us with sustainability and better feeding our planet here on Earth, which will make our planet here on Earth better. We use GPS for tracking our food supply in the transportation route, whether it's on a cargo ship. You think of airplanes. We're starting to travel again. Don't you want the pilot that's piloting your aircraft to have the best weather prediction that's coming from space technology? So there's so many great things. And we're also seeing the globalization of space. So we're becoming where it used to be the US and maybe Russia and the Europeans and the Chinese. Now you're seeing countries in Africa, the Kenyan Space Agency, and Indonesia, and the Saudi Space Commission, and the UAE Space Agency. So there are more countries joining, being part of the space ecosystem. There's more than 85 countries now operating in space, but there are many countries that are using space. Almost every country is using space technology. Their citizens are using space technology because it's right on our cell phones. So many great opportunities. And then again, as we think about that, we can think about the challenges we have on Earth. Not everyone has access to Wi-Fi. Not everyone is able to go to school remotely. Not everyone is able to access the global marketplace. So the more women in Africa and other parts of the world that can become entrepreneurs because they have access to the internet and they can sell goods and services, the more able they'll be able to benefit their family. And I say women, it is men and women, but in many countries, the women take care of the families. And so if we can enhance their quality of life, we enhance their family and their children's quality of life. And that's also here in the US. There are parts of the US that do not have access to internet. And so by putting up space-based assets, we can solve that challenge. We can solve the challenge of being able to grow better crops, precision agriculture, tracking. We have climate change. How do we track that? Water, pests, fertilizing our crops. There's so many ways we can use space technology to help our planet as we grow in people and population, and also as we look to solve climate change. So those are some of the things I look at. It's exciting, the globalization, the international, the connectedness, but some of the challenges are we do have a workforce shortage. So in the US, in Japan, in Europe, we do have an aging population. There are many individuals that are going to retire. Many have decided to early retire because of COVID. Many people have said, I'm going to retire. I want to enjoy my life. I want to change. So we are seeing openings in the space ecosystem. Again, high school graduate to PhD, manufacturing to rocket scientists, as well as a skills deficit. So although I may want to be a rocket scientist, I just said I'm not a STEM professional. So I have a skills deficit. But in the world we live in now, with technology changing so fast, we all have to become lifelong learners. So we need to work on how we can reskill and upskill individuals as new jobs and careers are evolved, so that that workforce shortage, we can transition the workforce into careers of the future. And then again, that other area is unlocking the innovation that is at NASA and the European Space Agency and the technology transfer offices. There are patents waiting to be commercialized in the US. You can apply for those grants, and you can apply for the patents. And then there are also grants that you can apply for to help commercialize that technology. So for your audience who are thinking about being entrepreneurs and they're not sure what they want to do, I highly encourage them to go to the NASA Technology Transfer Office.
Those are some amazing points. As you kept talking, I was like, wait, this is an amazing point. But every single point that you're making is so true and valuable. I mean, first off, the perspective on upscaling jobs, like skill development for jobs, I think is an amazing point that I've never heard before, which is so, like, now that you're saying it, it's like, oh yeah, that's obvious, right? I mean, as we're getting like a lot of the employers that are in the space industry right now are on the older side. So being able to transfer those skills and that knowledge to the next generations is so important. So, I think finding a method in order to, educate people in a upskilled manner is very, very important and something that we need to take into consideration. And additionally, a lot of people forget that a lot of the stuff that we use today is also space technology. I mean, whether it be something simple as a GPS. I'm a new learner. I got my permit, so I'm always thinking about the GPS. I would not know what to do without one. So I definitely can understand the value of GPS in our daily life and like different space technology. And it's amazing to see all the innovation that comes from the space industry environment. So it's very, very exciting, and agree 100% with every single point you made.
Well,
And so
thank you.
yeah, and as like a business, I always am a strong believer that someone who's in project management or business actually has to be very, very knowledgeable about everything that's happening in the space industry. So when you're a scientist, you're very niche, you're working on one thing, but when you're in the management side, you have to basically know everything. So how do you keep your skills so current with every single industry, like every single part of the space industry? How do you find time for
I have extra hours in my day.
it?
Easy. What I do is obviously good time management. So what I'll share with your audience is it's not only learning about the space industry, but it's also those 21st century skills, good communication, good time management, being able to manage your time, your resources. And so a number of things I like to do is both in addition to taking formal classes, whether it's with International Space University or other universities, there's informal learning where you can do webinars, you can read articles. One of my favorites is watching CNBC Mad Money with Jim Cramer while I'm on the treadmill, because I'm working out, because you need to be, I want everybody in your audience to know that health is important to taking care of yourself. You can't help others unless you help yourself and take care of yourself. But what I've learned from Jim Cramer is not only does he talk about the market, but he talks to industry leaders that are in emerging technologies. So I can learn about 5G and the Internet of Things and the importance of chips and semiconductors and electric vehicle power and power grids. And he brings those experts in so I can hear about the technology that's taking place and understand how that can be impactful to the future and to that future workforce. How do we position people for jobs in those sectors? Because there are 16 different sectors that are part of the space ecosystem. So most people think about Elon Musk and launching in space, but there's also, as I've said earlier, agriculture, the Internet of Things, finance. The entire financial system runs on space technology. You have education, you have public safety, transportation. So all of those sectors that Jim Cramer is talking about, he may not realize it, but they're all part of the space economy. And I want to know about that emerging technology because that helps me then share that with you and your audience, that there are all kinds of job opportunities for all of your audience listeners, as well as the future workforce. And they can then look at how do they want to be part of that space ecosystem, whether they want to go to Mars or they want to stay here on Earth and be part of the technology that space has created for us to have a better quality of life.
Yeah, that's, definitely very important to maintain yourself, your health, but also balance and make that time to stay updated with everything that's happening. I think sometimes we get caught up in our own little world and we forget to, take a moment to understand what's really happening beyond just the small section that we're a part of. So I'm very glad that you were able to bring some of those great resources out. And so my last and final question for you, kind of to wrap up the interview is, and you kind of already answered this question in multiple places, but just one final time I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for young people regarding the pursuit of pursuing a passion in the STEM field, space industry, something that you wish you knew when you were a younger high school or college student?
I would say even younger, and that is life is all about relationships. It's about paying attention to the people around you. Mentors, friends, and colleagues will pass through your life at different times in different ways, and they will each leave a mark that will shape you. The relationships and connections you form will make the extraordinary possible if you're open to it and if you have something to give in return, because relationships are about both people coming to the table and sharing.
That is a beautifully said statement. I think it's absolutely wonderful to have connections because it not only, and I was actually reading an article the other day about how most people, maybe it was like 67% or something, a large statistic number of people find their jobs or their careers or what they like to do through connections. So it's really crazy to see how these relations are not only valuable to helping us to, understand what to do next and have that support system, but also to, form those relations to do something, advance in your career. So I want to thank you so much for that amazing advice and also sharing your journey with us. It's so nice to hear from someone who's from the non-traditional background in the space industry, and hopefully it becomes another traditional way into the industry. So I want to thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Absolutely. It's my honor to join you today. I'm happy to share my story with your listeners, and I'm grateful that you reached out as well, because again, it's about all of us are part of the space ecosystem, young and old, male and female, different parts of the world, different skill, different interdisciplinary careers. So I want to thank you for reaching out on LinkedIn, and it's been a pleasure joining you. And I look forward to watching more of your interviews because you have interviewed some fantastic individuals. And for anyone who's watching, please check out the other interviews she's done. She has medical doctors, space medical doctors, scientists. She has a plethora of great role models and innovative ideas. So thank you for what you're doing to help create awareness about the global space ecosystem.
Thank you so much for your kind words.